was a network consulting company. You know, from the very beginning, ever since Pong came out, me and my twin brother have been ultra hardcore gamers and owning every different type of console, every different type of PC, every different type of gaming machine there was, you know, losing sleep, et cetera, and just playing games all the time. And show and create a consumer level based gaming show. So, you know, that's a pretty simple story, just a lot of hard work, a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice, at least on my part over this past year or so. Sorry?
My story's probably pretty well known. I was working in the internet industry and wasn't too happy with my job, so then Quake came out, so I'd rather spend some time playing with that. I put together CTF and promoted it and got it very popular. And from there I got recognized in the industry. And essentially, the basic success story since then. They'd recognized my talent with CTF and I signed a contract with them a little over a year and a half ago now. So then I worked on Quake 2 and doing Quake 2 CTF, a little patch of Quake 2 Arena, which should be pretty good game.
You know, one thing that I want to point out is that, you know, I don't have like any experience in the gaming industry at all, or any experience in putting on shows like this, no background at all. And I think that's something that we should all maybe talk about also up here, whether or not, you know, we specifically plan to get into the gaming industry, whether or not we had, you know, I'm sure we all wanted to, but, you know, did it happen by accident maybe or something like that? You know, I think in Zoid's case it was...
I was actually in the gaming industry back in 1991. I did a couple games for Accolade. I did Stratego on the PC and I worked on different games. But then the company I worked for, which was Mindspan, downsized, and so I took a job in the internet industry and worked there for about 5 or 6 years. And then when Quake came out, I wanted to get back into games. My interest as always was in multiplayer, high-speed action games. Quake was exactly the type of game I was interested in, multiplayer over the net. And that's why I really said, hey, I'll never get back into this.
Well, I guess my first experience with computer games was the Apple II. Got one in 1980, been playing all those little games for, well, forever. And I never really took seriously the fact that you could get into the industry and get a job actually making games. I mean, it's like, you know, real people don't do that. You know, that was kind of how I put it. So, you know, pretty much went through high school and, you know, I did some programming on the side, little gamey type things, but nothing serious. And then I went to college, got a computer science degree. While I was in college, I started doing computer animation. So I kind of did that, some 3D design and stuff like that. So I started hitting companies up for getting a artist job, 3D art type thing. And that was pretty cool. If I had actually tried doing that like a year before, everyone would have been like, oh my gosh, you know, 3D modeling, you know, come here. But by then, everyone started to already know it, and then they started hiring like real artists, which I wasn't, and taught them 3D art. So I didn't really do too well getting a job there. And I'd come to Raven like a year before that, actually, before I'd gotten out of college, because they were in the same town, University of Wisconsin-Madison. As I interviewed there, didn't get the job then. When I graduated, you know, after my kind of not very successful attempt at getting in as an artist, I called them again. They're like, hey, you could help us out a bit on Shadowcast. They were finishing that up. Did a little bit of script work from that, and then I went on to try getting a job again, and did too good a job. But I kept getting back to them, and eventually, you know, they remembered they needed somebody as a programmer. You know, oh my gosh, I guess I'll actually use my computer science degree, I thought. And they hired me on as that. As far as my computer science degree, yeah, a lot of people at Raven did get a degree, but in the short run, it was really like the demonstration stuff that I'd done. I did a little like demo of a game, Discs of Tron, if anyone remembers that game. I did kind of a game like that. Simple demo, you know, but you could, you know, run around and shoot and discs would bounce off the walls and stuff like that. That was enough to make them remember me, and like I said, it was enough to make them call me back later. So persistence in my case really helped.
I have to go with persistence as well for me as a writer. I went to U of T for 4 years, University of Toronto, for psychology. Had no plans of being a writer or anything. Then I started really getting into gaming and the internet, kind of just before the web was born, when it was still pretty text-based. And I pitched 102.1 The Edge, you guys may listen to CFNY, whatever. I'm doing a radio show called Mark's Web Watch, and I've been doing it now for 3 years. So I started, I guess, in the industry 3 years ago. From there, I thought, oh, it would be so cool to do a book based on the best of the web. But so through persistence, I just sent letters to every book publisher I could find. And sure enough, I got lucky. I got Macmillan in the States to call me and say, well, we don't want to do best of the net, but we see that by your resume you review games part-time for Toronto Computes. Free press paper here. So they said, hey, we already have an author, but you want to write with this guy to write this book? And I was like, whoa, yeah, sure. So I did this book called Internet Games Directory, and that came out, I was done September 96, and then it's like, okay, should I go back to my bill collector job? Or, so I just said, screw it, this is great, working from home. And just through the snowball effect, it just was great. I was getting bigger and bigger pubs, starting with Canada Computes, and I still write for the Toronto Star on Thursdays. And then I started getting calls from, Next Gen and USA Today and Playboy magazine, and then I just did a couple more books. And there's an article I wrote on the evolution of the 3D shooter on GameSpot that the guys from id called me and asked me to do the manual for Quake 2. So it was both id and Activision, actually. And then with the Quake 2 manual, they said, oh, we've got a really hot game coming up called Sin. We need someone to come down as a freelancer to give some flavor to the manual and stuff. So, and then up to now, I just now I write for about 40 pubs worldwide. And my last book is called I finished it 2 weeks ago. It's called Game Design: Secrets of the Sages, where I interviewed 145 of these guys on their tips and tricks and secrets on breaking into the industry, as well as I've got chapters on programming and art and animation and sound design, and that comes out through Macmillan at the end of March.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Richard Gray, and level designer. There definitely is no schooling or preparation for level designing other than doing it, so I fell into the industry. Back in Doom, when DEU came out, I don't know if any of you remember it, was a real old editor for Doom. And just out of passion, that's the other P word besides persistence, is almost everyone that's in the industry got in here because nothing's going to stop them. This is what they're going to do, whether they get paid for it, or no matter what. So I was definitely one of those that done 4 Doom unit levels, uploaded them to CompuServe, and caught the eye of Nick Newhart, who was working on Blood, First Blood game, back before it was transferred over to Monolith. And at the time he was working with somebody here. At the time they were working connected with Apogee, which was my fortune because they saw my blood levels and were working on Duke Nukem. You heard of that one? And hired me full time to come down to Garland, Texas to work on Duke, which was definitely my starfall. So I definitely fell into it. And now I think I all know our last game was Sin. About 5 of us left Apogee with our ego trips and made our own company, which is happening a lot lately. And last game was Sin. And that was it.
So I've had a pretty circuitous route to get to where I've come to as well. I started off, I built my first computer out of a kit when I was 12, and I sort of played around in a lot of programming and a lot of just general hobbyist things. But I always kind of resisted it, I think partly because at the time computers were kind of new and everyone tried to pigeonhole me as saying, oh, well, Kevin's going to be a computer geek and that's what he's going to do. And I was like, no, I'm going to go totally the opposite direction. So I actually went to the University of Southern California, where I